This webinar this morning is the main purpose of it is to give you, all of our members, a bit of an overview of what we learned out of the Trip Inspiration Survey we just finished off last week, and tell you all about what's in store. So good morning, George in Montreal, and good morning to everyone else. As I see my clicker is, my chat box is alive with people this morning. So let's get started. First of all, I know there's a few new people here this morning, so I'll quickly talk about what Wheel and Anchor is all about. Our mission is to bring travelers together. So I started this venture, Wheel and Anchor, with my partner Joel and some other colleagues about 3 years ago, because what we discovered was that when you travel with people that you have something in common with, whether you know them well, whether they're good friends or just acquaintances, if you have that like-minded view about what travel should be all about why we go, then it's a lot more fun when you travel together. And so that's our mission, is to bring travelers, true travelers, together. And we've had some great times so far. And once all of this craziness is over, we'll do a lot more. My personal mission is that each and every one of you become well-traveled and well-connected. You're already all well-traveled. And as you well know, my interpretation of well-traveled is not just checking off items on a box, but really having the experience of being in a place and experiencing all that it has to offer, and not just the sightseeing tour, the Champs-Élysées is on your right and the Arc de Triomphe is on your left kind of a trip. And in the process of doing that, invariably we become more connected, not only to our fellow travelers, but to the people that we meet along the way. So that's what we're all about at Wheel and Anchor. Joining us on our webinar this morning, as usual. So I'm Gordon, founder of Wheel and Anchor. Of course, my good friend and co-founder Joel is on board with us today, providing technical support, and Paula, whom many of you will have spoken with, who does a wonderful job of talking to all of you and sharing about our trips and doing all the sales logistics. So that's who's with us today. Our plan for this webinar this morning is all about you guys getting an understanding about where we're planning to go based on where you told us you'd like to go and the suggestions that we had. So I'm going to take you on that tour through all these different exciting trips that we've got in store. And first and foremost, I really want to take a moment to thank you so much for your participation, not only in today's webinar, but in the survey itself. Every moment of time you spend with us means a lot to me. We live in a world right now where there are a tremendous number of unknowns. We don't know really what's going to happen next and how quickly we'll be able to get back on the road. And so it's particularly important in these times when we've withstood a lot as an industry and as a company and as just a bunch of travelers, that, for us to be able to understand where you want to go, that is paramount for us in planning for the future, because let's face it, we have to do more with less resources, given everything that's happened and the effect that on our business. But more importantly, we want to come out with programs that will be popular enough that they will definitely go. I mean, we do small groups anyway, but we still need to get to that minimum number of people. So we are really looking for this kind of interactive way to make sure that we deliver trips that are exciting and that we can hopefully guarantee that they will all go. So thank you for that. Let's talk quickly, first of all, about our 2021 trips, because I know a lot of you are booked on some of those trips. I'm going to touch on them very briefly and let you know, because also it's an opportunity that if you, because some of these trips were not on the survey, but they were already planned for this year, maybe you want to reconsider coming with us in 2022. So let's take a quick look at those. First of all, the Azores and Porto. And the Azores was one of our first Wheel and Anchor weekend programs that we have not yet been able to operate. We've been to Havana, we've been to Panama, but we didn't make it to the Azores this past spring because it was postponed as a result of the pandemic. But we will be going back in April of 2022. I was able to negotiate with the airline that they extended the travel vouchers. So we'll be going back to the Azores for our 5-night program on São Miguel, and that'll be coupled with another 5 nights we're going to tack onto the end in Porto. So for those of you who were booked this year, we'll be going back. If you haven't, the Azores is a wonderful place to go, and it's got such a wonderful climate all year round. So we'll be going there in April of next year. Norway is one of our most popular trips, and this trip features the 11-night Hurtigruten cruise, which goes all the way up the coast from Bergen to the Russian border and back. We were supposed to go this past spring. We were supposed to go then. It was postponed to this coming spring. Not going to happen, I'm sad to say, but we will definitely go back in early May of next year. I'm just working with Hurtigruten now to figure out the terms of the postponement of that trip. If you are booked on it, please bear with us. I'm just working that out now in terms of what's going to happen with that. So as soon as I know, I will let you know, but we will be pushing it from this May to May of 2022. Then we had Sicily and Malta. So this was a new program. It was actually our most popular program from our 2021 trip inspiration survey that we did, of course, a year ago. So that program was on its way to being sold out. But then, of course, when the pandemic came along, it didn't work. We were supposed to go in May of this year, and it was postponed to June. But ultimately, I was speaking with our yacht line partners who operate the ship, and they said that it's just not going to happen this year. So we pushed that back to May of 2022. Because it wasn't in the trip inspiration survey, that is a yacht cruise that begins in Naples in Italy, goes through the Aeolian Islands to the south coast of Sicily, and then from there over to Malta. And then we add on 5 days visiting wonderful Malta and Gozo. So that's a terrific trip. And as soon as we get the new dates, we'll be introducing that once again. Another popular one from last year's survey was island hopping in Greece. So this is a program where we're going to spend 3 or 4 nights on some of these different islands. A lot of people visit Greece on a cruise where you only stop sort of in the morning. You spend a few hours in Santorini and Mykonos and all these places. But we designed a trip where we're actually going to spend 3 or 4 nights in Crete, in Santorini, in Paros, and again, get a little bit more in depth into the wonderful islands of Greece. That will be postponed from June of this year to June of 2022. And I hope that we'll have dates out for that sort of by the end of February. So that's what's going to happen with that. Japan, it was one of our first Wheel and Anchor, Gardens of England and France. I skipped this one. This is the program that we were going to operate with my good friend Todd Kjærgaard, who's one of Toronto's leading event florists. He does wonders with flowers. We were going to visit the Chelsea Gardens show in London, as well as Jardin des Plantes outside of Paris. So needless to say, we won't be able to go this May, but we will be definitely going back on the same dates in May of 2022. My goodness, I can't say that. So that's Gardens of England and France. Our Japan trip, that, as I said, we went in 2019 to Japan. We had a wonderful time going all through Japan. But again, we can't go this year, so we will reschedule that. Probably Japan is going to get pushed off to 2023, just because we have some conflicts from other programs that we wanted to run next year, and we just can't do them all at the same time. So look out for Japan. That'll be done in 2023. And finally, Ireland, which we were planning to go in June of this year, is one of the last trips now that we've had to postpone. This is a terrific trip where, again, we spend 3 or 4 nights in Dublin, Galway, Killarney, and get to know the terrific Irish countryside. So that program will be pushed again from June of this year to June of 2022, with details to be out later this winter. So let's get on to the exciting part. Oh, sorry, before we do that, fall of 2021, I'm getting ahead of myself. Fall of 2021. So it goes without saying that it is a little bit early to tell what's going to happen. There has been some good progress in some ways, but let's face it, we are still very much in the midst of this pandemic. there is also a long way to go in terms of the rollout of the vaccination program and all the rest of it. So there are a lot of factors that are going to determine whether or not we're going to be able to travel this fall. I know some of you are optimistic, some of you are less optimistic. And I'm just trying to be in the middle and be a realist. I think it will be probably March or April before we're able to know definitively. The programs particularly affected, of course, are Trans-Siberian and Croatia programs that are pretty much sold out in September and October. But we do still have spaces for Caucasus, which is Georgia and Armenia, that's scheduled for October, as well as for our Israel, Jordan, and Egypt program in November. I'm feeling pretty good about Egypt, the Middle East, by the end of the year. And the other programs, I'd like to say I'm feeling good, but let's just say it's a bit of a wait and see situation. So hang in there. As soon as we know more, of course, the moment I know anything, I will send out one of the updates and we will keep you posted on that. Good. Let's move on now to the results of the 2021-22 survey and everything that we learned. The good news is that almost everything we proposed was well received. In fact, there were almost enough numbers, positive numbers, like people that said rated it 4 or 5, meaning very interested or extremely interested to go, that we could probably run every single trip that we put in the survey. So that's very good news. There wasn't anything, there were a few surprises, and I'll get to those in a minute. But I want to touch on some of the highlights of that, because I think that's what you're most interested to hear about. First of all, the 5x5 programs were very popular. So if you'll think back to the summertime when we launched this idea, the concept is that this is one of the 2 new programs we've introduced in the context of slow travel, meaning we go to 5 different destinations, in some cases 6 or maybe 4, but and we spend 5 nights in each. And when you spend 5 nights in a place, I always say, how many nights do you spend in a hotel before you unpack? I dare say it's probably at least 2 or 3. For me, the number is 3. If I stay 3 nights in a hotel, I'm going to unpack all my suitcase and put everything away. And that's the point where you really feel settled. But when you spend 5 nights in a place is when I think you can say, yeah, I've truly been there and I've experienced it. I've had the time to sit in a cafe and have a coffee or sip a beer or a glass of wine in a pub or a tavern and talk to some of the locals. And in a 5x5 program, we would spend roughly half the time, so roughly 2.5 days on organized excursions in the city or town that we're in or to the environs, but we'd spend half the time doing nothing, or I should say having leisure time to explore it on their own. And that's probably the single biggest feedback that we get about people who've gone on regularly organized tours, is that there just isn't enough time. So a 5x5 is designed to give you enough time. So out of the 3 5x5s that we presented, the most popular was our Germany and the Benelux program. And so this is one where we start in southern Germany in Munich, and we head up to a university town of Heidelberg, and then up into the Netherlands to Utrecht, which is a beautiful another university town. And from all of these little towns, you can visit the neighboring cities, and you get the charm of the smaller cities and towns, in particular in the Benelux countries. And so many of us will have been to Amsterdam, or we might have been to Frankfurt, the big cities, but it's the small ones that really, I think, evoke a lot of the charm and the culture of these countries. So the most popular one was Germany in the Benelux. So we're going to look to do that probably in July of 2022. The second most popular was Scandinavia and the Baltics. And so that was basically a program where we're going to visit the 5 capital cities. So Copenhagen, Stockholm. We're not going to do Oslo because we'll do that on our Norway program with the fjords. But it'll be Copenhagen, Stockholm, then over to Helsinki, Tallinn, and then Vilnius. 5 nights in each, which personally, I love all the Scandinavian capitals. I haven't been to the Baltics, but they are fantastic. And it is really worth to spend the time. So that's our 5x5s. You will see for sure Germany and the Benelux, as well as Scandinavia. and the Baltics on our program in the summer of 2022. Then the most popular program of all, which I was very happy to hear, is this concept of liveaways. And so if you attended our liveaway program, we did it back in September where we launched the concept. The idea here is that this is really a ultra long stay program. So you go to a place for a full month, and we've targeted the initial ones to be during the winter months because that's the best time to go away for a prolonged period when we want to avoid the winter that you're experiencing right now, and go to places. We introduced 4 in our Liveaways brochure that came out in the fall, and of those, certainly Cyprus and Madeira came out on top, where we have actually great interest, and so I'm very excited about that. We're going to head off to Madeira in February and Cyprus in March of next year, of course. But we actually had quite a bit of interest in Koh Samui, which is quite near to my heart because it's the island that I can see when I look out my window in front of me. Koh Samui in Thailand. We're going to be having the first of our Liveaway webinars in 2 weeks' time on February the 4th, which is going to cover Koh Samui. And we're going to talk a little bit about the experience of spending a month on this wonderful tropical island here in southern Thailand, and all the great things that we can do in this tropical paradise. So again, the idea of a liveaway is that by spending a month in one place, we seek out more comfortable accommodation, so often like little apartments, so you've got a little bit more space. It's semi-curated, so we have a bunch of excursions to go on. In fact, the way that we're looking to do this is to give you more flexibility and say, oh, here's a whole bunch of excursions that you can go on, and part of the trip price will include sort of a credit. So you can choose what you want to do and also what you don't want to do, or how much you want to do. And so the idea is that, as I say, it's semi-curated. Half the time there'll be organized programming. The other half the time you can relax and you can enjoy. We'll obviously have a local host from each of these places who's available to us to help us plan some of the activities that we might do on our own. We're going to have lots of social get-togethers, whether it's card nights or movie nights, or bringing in some locals for some entertainment, going out to a lounge, like so many of the things that you would do if you think about the way that you spend time going down south to Florida or to the Caribbean or Mexico. For those of you that go and spend that amount of time, we're looking to duplicate that experience in these different places to give you a sense of a different culture. So I think that's why those programs were so popular. So we're very excited, and I can't wait to bring you Koh Samui in 2 weeks' time, and shortly thereafter, we'll be bringing you the liveaways on Madeira and Cyprus. The other series of programs that was quite popular were our train journeys. And of course, we had 4 incredible train journeys webinars that took place through the fall months. And they were the most well-attended webinars that we have had. So I have heard from other sources, from other friends and colleagues in the industry, that there is sort of a return to the rails, if you will. People are looking for a new form of getting around. Of course, for the last 10 or 15 years, it's been river cruising has been all the rage, but I have this sense that train travel is coming back into vogue. I was excited when I read in the Globe the other day that the Canadian has reopened, and you can now travel again across Canada after having been suspended for some time during the pandemic. And so we brought to you a number of different journeys in our incredible rail journeys. The ones that were, I think, at the top of the list, and were also mentioned in our Trip Inspiration Survey, are the Australia program, the GAN, and the Indian Pacific. And so that's a trip that we're looking to do at the end of next year. We'll include, as I say, those 2 terrific rail journeys, as well as a number of other stops in Australia. We will likely also do the Rovos program, Rovos Rail, the most luxurious train journey in the world. I can attest to that. They are my favorite, and they have a terrific trip from Cape Town all the way up to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. So those are the two programs that we have on the books for 2022. And then possibly as well Trans-Siberian. It all depends on what happens with our Trans-Siberian trip scheduled for this September. So there's still some questions out there for that, but if you're thinking rail journeys, you will be happy to know that we will be doing at least two in 2022 and beyond. And I think that there's enough interest that we will repeat the Trans-Siberian going forward, because a number of people have mentioned that they want to do it in the future, but they have conflicts already, and as well as the Rovos programs and some of the other ones that we talked about over the last couple of months. So I'm very excited. I'm a train buff. Can't wait to get on the next train. I mentioned cruising, so let's talk about cruising for a minute. It kind of goes without saying that there was a bit of hesitation. So the level of interest in our cruising programs, even though we are focused mostly on smaller ship cruises, was less than I might have expected. But honestly, I expected that cruising would be a bit less. It's gotten a bit of a bad name with the some of the challenges that we had on cruise lines earlier in the pandemic, and they certainly have a mammoth task to restore the confidence that the traveling public has in going on cruises. That being said, as I said, we sort of specialize in the smaller ships. You know, you take, for example, the Hurtigruten ships, which are all less than 1,000 passengers, or our Scotland by Sea program that we were going to run this year, which has also been postponed. But I think that there's an interest for even smaller ships. And so what coming out of the gates last year, one of the most popular programs that we offered was the Canal du Midi. So the Canal du Midi is this long canal that actually connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean all through the southern French countryside. And we would do it by houseboats. This is a wonderful partner I discovered when I was traveling in southern France last year. And on a houseboat, you've got generally four bedrooms and bathrooms, and so it is truly ultra small ship cruising because you're only on there with 5 or 6 other people. And so I think that kind of cruising, the other one we had featured for this fall, which is also still available, I must note, but it's a question mark if we'll be able to go, was yachting on the Turkish Mediterranean in Gulets that similarly have 4 cabins each. So I see a strong trend towards this type of cruising, just because it mitigates most of the challenges that you have when you're traveling with, you know, hundreds or thousands of people aboard larger cruise ships. There's one other surprise, but I'll mention it in just a few minutes when I get to the other surprises. For the active programs, so this was one of the things that we learned was they were a little bit less of interest than I expected. We suggested 4 in the Trip Inspiration survey, and what I did find was that our very active ones, that was Bhutan and Patagonia, sort of scored the lowest. Still enough people there, I think, to go, so we will plan those trips ultimately, but likely what you can expect for 2022 will be the Camino de Santiago. That's the hiking trail that goes all the way from the French-Spanish border to the city of Santiago de Compostela, the famous Pilgrim's Way. So that's one that you will likely do in the fall of 2022, as well as the e-biking along the Danube River. That's between Salzburg and Vienna in Austria. So I think that there was some interest in that. So we'll try those ones out. And as I say, I do believe that we have a number of members that like the idea of active programs. I should mention that, like on our LIVEAWAYS, for example, where we have more time available, we're going to try to include active components so that you can go hiking, and we can facilitate that so that, you know, you get the exercise in. So that was the result of the active programs. I just want to tell you about a couple of the surprises, so things that we really didn't expect, and where we got some stronger interest. First of all, the Italian Villa Vacation. So this is a trip that we had originally launched and planned to go in the fall of last year. Of course, we we all know what's happening in Italy and the challenges that they've been having. So we have put it off. We pulled the program. We haven't selected a new date for it, but it came out, I think, the #1 or #2, Joel will correct me, of all of the trips that we had proposed. Why is that? Well, first of all, Italy's always been popular. So when we have polled people who on our new member questionnaire, so when you join Wheel and Anchor, we ask you, where are the places that you'd like to go? Italy comes up, 30, 40% of the time on people's lists of where they want to go. Everybody wants to go to Italy. And when you go on a villa vacation, again, same thing with like the small boats on the houseboats on the Canal du Midi or the gulets in Turkey. You're in a small group of people enjoying one of these spectacular private homes, these villas in either the Veneto or Tuscany region of Italy. And you have a curated program that is small group trips, visiting these villages and doing all the food and the wine tasting. For those who have been to Italy already, and I know we have a lot of repeaters on Italy, it's a great way to do it a bit differently, particularly when you're in a community like Wheel and Anchor and you do have a sense of the people that you're going with. So you'll definitely see our Italian villa vacation probably on for the spring of next year. So if you mark that as one of the ones that you wanted to go on, you can expect that we'll have that one soon. The other one that was a bit of a surprise to me was the Loire Valley. So we have a unique cruise partner that has the only river cruise ship on the Loire. The Loire is a very shallow river that, of course, comes out of central France and flows out to the Atlantic Ocean near Nantes. It's a beautiful river, most notably because it has all these spectacular French chateaus. You can get a sense of it in the picture. Traditionally, it hadn't been as popular, but I think that because it is a unique itinerary and it goes to a part of France that most people don't get to see, and that I quite enjoy. I love the cuisine and the wine. The white wine in this region is terrific. And the fact that the ship is, again, a paddle wheeler to accommodate the shallow river makes it a bit of a different trip. It's also a small vessel. It only holds 80 guests. So it's smaller, about almost half the size of some of your other river cruise ships. So that one was more popular. So we're just working out with them when we can get enough space to go with the group. And we'll look forward to going to the Loire Valley, probably in the fall of 2022. Another one, this was actually a trip that was suggested by some of our members, as some of the other ones were as well. But Helen, thank you for this one. Namibia and Botswana. So a lot of people head to Africa and think about going on safari in the classic destinations like Kenya or Tanzania in East Africa, or of course, South Africa. For me, from my own travels, there is hardly a more beautiful country than Namibia, which of course is on the west coast of Southern Africa, just immediately above South Africa. In particular, which is not part of the wildlife part of the trip, but the sand dunes and the Sossusvlei, which is what you see in the picture here, the highest sand dunes in the world, are absolutely breathtaking scenery. And only one of the many things that you see in Namibia, the Kalahari Desert, the Etosha Salt Pan, where they have, I remember driving around with a rental car and seeing all of the big five within about the first 20 minutes of driving into the park. So it's quite an experience. And Botswana, of course, which is a very swampy country, the Okavango Delta, Chobe National Park, and has a whole different set of wildlife than you typically expect in the more arid parts of Southern Africa. So that is a program I'm excited to be putting together. We don't have the timing on it yet. It's looking like it'll probably be the fall of 2022. But as soon as that's out, and I know a few of the members that are hot to trot, we'll get that one out for you. I think that, yes, the New Zealand Liveaway was another one that was more popular than expected. In fact, I think it might have topped out the list of all of them. But when we did the survey, we didn't include the price tag. So that may dissuade a few people. Don't get me wrong, New Zealand is a spectacular country. Paula has a particularly good amount of experience there. Personally, I have not traveled to New Zealand, believe it or not. I've been pining to get there for a long time, but it is a very, very popular destination. And our two-center Live Away program was both in the north part of the North Island outside of Auckland, and then down in Wellington, which is in the beautiful mountainous area of the southern island in New Zealand. So we will definitely do that program. We had been thinking about doing it this November, but again, with all the question marks around the pandemic, we decided to put it off. It is a more expensive destination for sure than our other Live Away programs, but I think that there are, and it seems pretty evident that a lot of our members really, really want to go to New Zealand. And this is a great way to do it because although you're in two different spots, there's lots of excursions and you get a great sense of New Zealand. So Fran asked if we thought about adding a New Zealand extension to the Australia trip. Yes, we thought about that as well. So we're just working on all of those different details on which programs we'll offer and where the most demand is, and then that's how we'll do it. And I'll get back to the other questions in just a moment. So we're about to go to the Q&A session. So if you do have a question about anything I brought up, get it ready. Next steps and where we go from here. Well, at this point, it's all about seeing what the coming months will bring. As I say, we are in the process of planning. Well, first of all, we're replanning and rescheduling everything that was planned for this spring. So we have to deal with all of that. Simultaneously, we're also bringing out some of these trips that I have mentioned to you just now. Our 5x5s, our Liveaways. Of course, the first one will be released in 2 weeks' time. So we have a lot of work on our agenda for the next weeks and months, but we'll be coming out with all the new stuff. But of course, the big question that everybody has is when can we travel? And when we can travel, what's going to happen? What are the protocols and precautions that we're going to be putting into place? And it goes without saying that question has come up many, many times. We have, well, I'll say this, we have a lot of thoughts and ideas, and we've done a lot of research and looked at what others in the industry are doing. And we will undoubtedly have a very comprehensive list of precautions in place. Of course, we have to balance that with the pleasure of the trip. And part of the reason why we made a decision to just go ahead and postpone all of our spring trips is because even if it was possible to travel, there's possible to travel, and then there's, is it going to be a comfortable experience? If I have to wear a mask everywhere I go, and if I have to physical distance from everybody all the time, I mean, those are things that, frankly, as travelers, we're probably going to just have to live with for a while longer. I think that air travel is going to mandate the wearing of masks, certainly, I think all through this year and probably beyond. There will likely be some requirements for vaccinations imposed either by the airlines or by countries that we're going to visit. And of course, we're looking at whatever measures that we would take internally. I've contemplated the idea of COVID-19 quick tests, rapid tests, if we can procure those and make them available and use them on our trip to further mitigate any of the risks of travel, then of course we're going to do that. I can't for a minute fathom that going anywhere and not being as safe as we possibly can. And yet it's a fluid situation. It's changing all the time. And I hope that when we do get back to travel, the situation is such that we can act relatively normally. We don't have to be, too much different, so that we can enjoy the experience without having all this getting in our way. So there's a lot to juggle, a lot to think about, but it's very forefront on my mind and on all of our minds. As we move to a point in time when we can get back to traveling again. So I wanted to let you know it's very much on my mind, even if I don't have it in black and white, all complete. We'll get there. As I mentioned before, our next next webinar will be our first Live Away program, Koh Samui. And even if you weren't sure about going to Thailand, maybe come out and join us, and you can learn a little bit about how the Liveaways are going to run, and a little bit about Thailand and Koh Samui, in this wonderful part of the world that I call home. So that's going to be on February the 4th at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Would love to see you there. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, Paul has posted, by the way, the link to the webinar for COSMUI in the chat box, so you can see it there. But of course, it's in our newsletter as well, so it should be easy to find. So, so now it's time for questions. If you have questions you don't want to answer here, or something comes up later about anything, then please, please do drop us a note. The information is there. I'll put it up on the screen again. And in the meantime, let's see some of those questions. So Fran asked, when are you considering Australia? Well, we're considering Australia in either the spring or the fall for them, which is of course the opposite for us, as the optimal time to go. And we're also looking at the rail schedule for Australia. So I would say at this point, we're looking at either November of 2022 or the spring, so March, April of 2023. As I say, we're just, Australia, as you well know, has been one of the countries that has the strictest of measures regarding international travel. So there's talk that they're not even going to let anybody in this year at all. So until we get a clearer picture on that, we're not really going to make any decisions. We're also waiting for the schedule of the railway, which will be released in hopefully the short term. Kendra asked about Croatia as an option for an Adriatic adventure. Yeah, I think Croatia has been certainly for the last couple of years since we started, perhaps our most sought after destination in terms of number of people booked. At the moment, our trip to Croatia in the fall is basically fully subscribed, and we have a number of people interested to go the following year. So I think that it's worthy of spending more time in Croatia and doing more of those kinds of programs. So we'll definitely see that. Mike asked about the Havana trip. Yes, we'll definitely go back to Havana. We had a marvelous time there in November of 2019. I went with a small group. We had a ton of laughs, and Havana is a city worth visiting. So it's loosely, tentatively on the agenda for this November. But again, I'm holding back a little bit until we get a little further through this tough situation before we make any decisions on doing new programs at the end of this year. And Fran, your comment is noted. Joel mentioned to me as well that if you want to get on the list for Croatia for 2022, just drop Paula a note, because we have got quite a growing list of people, even though we don't have the program out yet, because we're waiting for the schedules. So, let's see, just going back here for some of the questions. Oh, Helen asked if Norway is a possibility for 2022. Yes, no, we're definitely going to Norway in 2022 because we're going to postpone the trip in May 2021 to 2022. So we'll definitely be going back to Norway. Good. Then I don't see any other questions here. So I hope this was informative for you. I hope it gave you a bit of an insight as to what we're planning for the coming 2 years. So lots in store for you. But if you do have comments, feedback, questions, anything at all. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention before you go. We're going to be, you've read a lot about the travel industry and how it's, you know, how bookings are going to happen and increased flexibility and so on. And needless to say, we are pleading with our various partners around the world to give us better terms. So when we release these programs for next year, we're likely going to just simply have a list, sign up, fill in the form, no deposit necessary. We're going to hold off collecting deposits for as long as possible, just to give you the comfort that we get through all of this. But at the same time, get yourself on a list and make sure you can get on the trip that you want to go. Yes, and thank you for all of your comments. And yes, the Loire Valley is with Quasi Europe. And I see a few other questions came in. I'll respond to you by email. Thank you again. Thanks for all of your participation today. And look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. Have yourselves a wonderful day.